saluto della Biennale. Oggi abbiamo con noi un folto pubblico giovane, sono i ragazzi di scuole medie di Altivole e di San Martino. Volevo rivolgermi a loro prima per ringraziarli per essere con noi, poi per dirvi perché facciamo questa cosa qui. Facciamo queste cose perché al di là del sentire, del vedere le opere degli artisti, per ascoltare la musica degli artisti, abbiamo l'occasione abbastanza straordinaria. Questo il compito della Biennale è avvicinare all'arte ma anche avvicinare agli artisti. Abbiamo l'opportunità di conoscerli, di vederli, di incontrarli, di sentire dalla loro voce qual è il loro modo di operare, le loro pratiche, a cosa pensano quando compongono, a chi pensano quando compongono. E il maestro Tandun è un maestro che vive sull'onda del contemporaneo, quindi vive in mezzo a noi uomini e cittadini del tempo presente, che vuol dire un occhio al futuro, che vuol dire sentire la presenza del passato, ma sempre vissuto intensamente come momento di transito verso il futuro. Vogliamo capire dove stiamo andando. E nel colloquio con lui, quindi al termine del colloquio con lui, se voi nel frattempo avete maturato qualche particolare domanda, saremo lieti di darvi la parola, e questa giornata, arricchita dalla vostra presenza e da tanti altri gentili ospiti, sarà stata utile come noi vogliamo che sia, e saremo quindi doppiamente grati al maestro Fedeli che dirige la Biennale Musica e al nostro maestro Tandun, che sarà ora presentato e indagato attraverso domande, appunto domande interessate a saperne di più, quasi intorno alla personalità, alla persona di un artista e alla musica che gli compone. Il maestro Fedele presenterà lui direttamente questo incontro, innanzitutto. Quindi alla fine grazie davvero a tutti per essere qui e grazie a voi delle scuole di essere con noi.
Naturalmente un grazie anche da parte mia. Il Leone d'Oro di quest'anno, assegnato al maestro Tandun, si inserisce in quel filone rosso che il festival porta avanti. Quello di stasera è il concerto dell'Orchestra Sinfonica della RAI, diretto dallo stesso maestro Tandun, presenta sue opere della prima delle grandi monografie di autori orientali che noi presentiamo in questo festival. Adesso ascolterete il maestro rispondere a delle domande che saranno poste dal giornalista e musicologo Andrea Penna, una personalità che sicuramente conoscerete perché chissà quante volte l'avrete ascoltato alla radio. E quindi vi invito il maestro Tandun, il nostro Leone d'Oro, inizio questa chiacchierata. Grazie.
Allora, buongiorno a tutti. Come vedete tutti siete dotati, se lo volete potete dotarvi delle cuffie per la traduzione simultanea, che renderà più semplice. Ringrazio già la bravissima collega che ci fornirà la voce italiana del maestro Tandun, che è così gentile da rispondere alle nostre domande. Spesso si dice non ha bisogno di presentazioni, questo è veramente uno dei casi non così frequenti in cui l'artista non ha bisogno di presentazioni, perché davvero si tratta di un compositore globale, un compositore conosciuto da una parte all'altra degli oceani, non di un unico oceano, in realtà conosciuto in tutto il mondo, in tante discipline diverse, in tante discipline, branche diverse della sua attività musicale, che però in realtà si riconduce spesso a una unica linea, anche se è così ricca e molteplice. Da dove cominciare? Io ho pensato che un buon modo per cominciare la nostra conversazione era cominciare da Venezia, dal luogo in cui ci troviamo, il luogo dove si terrà il concerto questa sera, il luogo dove viene consegnato questo Leone d'oro alla carriera. Venezia è storicamente molte cose, storicamente è anche una città ponte, un ponte pacifico, un ponte bellicoso, un ponte di conquista e un ponte di resistenza, un ponte di passaggio però sicuramente fra Oriente e Occidente. Ovviamente dipende come lo si guarda, dove è l'Oriente, dove è l'Occidente, chi guarda da che lato. Mi piacerebbe sapere dal compositore Tandun, che ha sicuramente guardato a Venezia in un suo lavoro molto conosciuto e che ha ispirato altri suoi lavori ugualmente conosciuti, che è l'opera Marco Polo, se si ricorda la prima immagine che lui ha avuto di Venezia, la prima volta che ha sentito parlare di Venezia, quando Venezia è comparso nel suo orizzonte.
Actually, 20 years ago, when I stopped my opera Marco Polo, I start to question myself where the Silk Road of Marco Polo should stop. So I come to Venice to write down my first note of the opera. So I always believe Venice here, actually from here to China, representing two ends of the world, east and west, and of course Venice from a history point of view is always the center of the arts and also ideas. So to me, Venice is always a imaginative place, it's a dream city.
E quindi abbiamo già messo la prima pietra in questo percorso che parte da Venezia, la prima delle due tappe, se vogliamo, la prima delle due stazioni di un percorso lunghissimo, se ne possono immaginare molti altri, e sicuramente dall'altra parte c'è la Cina, che ovviamente per noi si riassume nell'immagine di questo immenso continente lontano. La Cina è una molteplicità di ricchezze culturali, una storia plurimillenaria, è molto difficile confrontarsi in una maniera completa con la Cina e anche con le immagini della Cina che provengono dalla musica di Tandun, che sono molto ricche, che sollecitano molte domande. Il piccolo villaggio di Simao, dove è nato il maestro Tandun, per esempio, ha ispirato con le sue caratteristiche di questo luogo, con questi alberi dal colore bianco che sembrano quasi dei salici piangenti, che proprio per le loro caratteristiche, da quello che ho letto e ho capito, erano considerati un luogo adatto al seppellimento dei defunti, e quindi un luogo anche di lutto, è un luogo in cui la musica aveva anche questa relazione con la celebrazione dei defunti. È già un luogo dove sono nate delle scintille del mondo musicale, tra virgolette, magico, sciamanico, del mondo tradizionale, che è molto diverso da una parte della Cina moderna, e che in un periodo della Cina moderna è stato addirittura è stato fatto il tentativo di cancellarlo. Ecco, questo mondo convive nella musica di Tandun con l'accezione più immediata e proiettata verso il futuro della modernità, ma anche con il mondo di Beethoven, per primo Beethoven fra i compositori, Bach, Mahler e altri. Ecco, mi piacerebbe sapere come questo processo creativo, che ha sempre unisce queste influenze fra est e ovest si è sviluppato. Perché è sempre presente questo elemento di incontro fra i due mondi?
I was born in Hunan, China, and you know two people from Hunan. One is Mao Zedong. Another one is me. So at least you know two people from Hunan. And actually, you know who introduced the Hunan to the world? I think it's Puccini, because when I go to the Turandot, when the trio, the ping ping pong,
Una casa nell'Unam.
yeah, the one of the guy asked him, "Where is your home?" He said, "Oh, my home was beautiful women, landscape, and beautiful food, and incredible music, and blah 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 blah. It's called Hunan." So I was very, very proud of my village, Shimao, Cong. Actually, the music in my childhood is always very, very important, influenced my later creation, especially in the two sides. One is the organic music. When I was a little child, I always did myself in the river, washing myself, washing vegetable, and making all kinds of rhythms in the river. And I hear all beautiful music actually through the river. And secondly is the wonderful theater and the wonderful sound from the temple, from a Buddhist temple. This is Zen music and wonderful fairy tale stories about this traditional goddess. It always influenced me so much. So later on, of course, when the world become developing so quick, and you always have to have a link with whatever you were born, whatever you are the most familiar with. And that's kind of a contradiction between the old memory and also the new world happening every second is new. Be the most stimulating resource for my creativity, for my writings. And I think also, you know, we're just talking about the Silk Road. We talked about the two ends of the Silk Road. The most representatively is the Italian China, the link to the whole world. And that Silk Road history, cultural commerce, and exchange always made me think the world is one home of ours. It's actually, you don't have to think the world is many, many homes. The world is many, many worlds. So I think this is because I learned from Marco Polo, and you treat everywhere is your home. Everywhere you go to rediscovery, and that place is your home again. So that's why, to me, the culture in my heart, not just organic sound from my Hunan River, and not just beautiful Zen temple and the Buddhist temple, the farewell, the beautiful stories, drama and the local opera is my home culture, but also Marco Polo's, also Beethoven, also Monteverdi and Verdi. So, as a composer, I always asking myself why I want to be an artist. And our president ballad, just to make music and to think as an artist is different. But sometimes I often actually question myself why I want to be an artist. To make money? No, there's a much better way to make money. To make music? No. I think it's to share deep side of your soul, your thought, your idea, your life, and your joy, and also your sadness. So through music, through poetry, through painting, through drama, film, visual arts. So I think communication and the share is the most joyful and most important thing as an artist or to be an artist. So that's why the language of my art, it's always been aimed to communicate with the world, not just to communicate with that little village I was born, because I never thought that village is my only home. And like John Cage, one of my teachers, one of my most admired philosopher and composers in the world, he said, we have to realize this world is the only one home of ours. And if you're thinking of this way, the vision of artist is going to be much bigger, and you are going to be living outside of your own sail, of your own village, of your own box.
Questi Unica Casa, tutte queste persone con cui vuole condividere non solo la sua musica ma appunto la sua anima, vivono in mondi diversi, hanno culture differenti, quindi lei è probabilmente per noi un compositore cinese che ha assorbito molto, ha studiato molto la cultura musicale occidentale e ci porta, per esempio questa sera nel programma che ascolteremo, nella Passacaglia, ci porta sì anche i suoni che vengono dallo smartphone, è un mondo interattivo di cui parleremo dopo, ma ci porta anche i suoni di alcuni strumenti musicali cinesi antichi che noi conosciamo, magari qui qualcuno, questo è un pubblico dotto, qualcuno li conosce anche bene, però in generale conosciamo a malapena, magari conosciamo il pipa, ma molti altri ci sono anche ignoti. Per il pubblico cinese, che l'ascolta, lei che cos'è? È un compositore occidentale che si nutre anche della grande cultura cinese. C'è una differenza nel modo in cui lei sente di essere ascoltato, accolto, considerato nella sua prima patria Cina e nella sua seconda patria di un'unica patria che è poi qui in Occidente?
Actually, I'm always regret not be a philosopher, because I love philosophy. The big reason I love philosophy is because of Lao Tzu. Lao Tzu is a philosopher more than 2,000 years ago. He's a very interesting guy, and he always thought yin and yang, and yin and yang, female and male, black and white, and somehow they are different. But actually, to research the yin and the yang, to research the different side of matter as the permanent, forever purpose for anything in your life, then I find it's very fascinating, because I find the Western music and Chinese music basically it's consisted a different way actually. Western music is more chromatically made. It's about the construction, mathematics, and the structure, and coming with do, mi, so, re, fa, la, so, si, re, whatever, with 12 tones, even 24 tones. But the sound world has been coded from color, pitch, whatever, dum, 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 dum. Then the philosophy to make all of those sound colors scientifically, passionately, and that become very, very interesting culture. But the music of the East, ancient time, is made of organic, and when the sound starts, and they don't believe sound should be coded. Dong, dong, ding, dong, 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 should be. They think from low to high, everything is all organically associated, like the wind, like the rain. So that's why visual art, music art, or drama even, you see, the fundamental philosophical language, the way of thinking, actually are different. I admire both ways because, you know, I love mathematics, I love philosophy, I love structure also. I think it's because, I don't know why, maybe because my mom is doctor. My father used to be the food research. He is very interested in food, and he served in the Food Research Institute. So I think because of this, in my music making or my music art, sometimes I have to reinvent my technique, my artistic language between those two worlds. One is chromatic, another one is organic. For example, when Wagner, 19th century, I just heard Wagner with his lover, lived in this hotel, which now is the Biennale, for a long time writing his great operas. And I feel that energy actually. You know, shamanistic culture, which is also another Chinese aspect of Wu. And that also made me believe everything has a life, sound has a life. Not just the people, but anything has a life. So that's why I have to find a technique to be able to express or talking through different media. And that's very interesting because the technique of organic sound to have those pitches, or technique of the technique of organic or technique of chromatic, there's two things actually. It's like a painters. They are using the brush, maybe is this way, like a calligraphy, or maybe it's this way, like oil paintings. So these two aspects is just like an Italiano and the Chinese. They're different. The Italiano is always structuralized, allegro, vivace, poco accelerando, and subito, poco andiveniando. You see, you always see this, and the Chinese said, 渐强渐弱，快快快快，慢慢的，突然咵下来了，然后you see, they're talking about the same thing, but actually through the sound, it's a totally different world. Then, as a composer, as an artist, how could I share this kind of idea with the symphony orchestra? And symphony orchestra, of course, is invented by Italiano, maybe, but actually in China now has most symphony orchestras. In the Beijing, one city, has 32 orchestras. Shanghai has 11 orchestras. So total China, and you know China now, as Mr. Penna, you said China is happening, and every day there's an opera house open. And in the last year, there are 35 concert halls opened. And in China, I see so many young kids here, young students here. I'm very, very pleased because this is a wonderful country, you know. I always thought to myself as Marco Polo from China come to Italy. And I always felt that each time when I come to Italy, my wife always laughing at me. Do you want to buy a house here? Because every time, I don't have money to buy, but that's my expression. Every time when I come to a city, I love it. I said, we should buy a house here. So, and every time here when I come with my wife come here, my first sentence when I landed in Venice or Roma or Torino or any city of Italy, Parma, I said, we should buy a house here. I always thought this is the home, actually, for artists, for the real people. You know, people love food, love people, and they love landscape, sunshine. It's always Italy is the best place. I think, of course, that talking about, you know, my technique, that's why I always thought 2 worlds is 1. 1 plus 1 is a 1. And then we come to a digital time. And everything, if you, as a young kids, you know, everything you met, as Lao Tzu said, 2,000 years ago, Lao Tzu said, everything is a yin and a yang. Everything is 1 plus 1 equals 1. Actually, the capitalists always thought 1 plus 1 equals 3. And the scientist says 1 plus 1 equals 2. And the artists say 1 plus 1 is 1. That's the Lao Tzu said.
Che tutto, e lei lo ha detto per adesso anche più volte, nella sua musica abbia un elemento teatrale forte, molto presente. Qualsiasi forma lei incroci, incontri, sviluppi nel suo percorso creativo ha un elemento teatrale molto forte. E del resto la maggioranza delle sue opere, dei suoi lavori, sono servite come base per altri lavori di carattere diverso, lavori sinfonici, concerti. Anche il concerto per orchestra da Marco Polo che ascolteremo questa sera ha questa caratteristica. E quindi l'elemento teatrale è enormemente importante. Ci vuole dire qualcosa di più, anche perché lei ha una parte del suo sviluppo di educazione, di cultura proprio da quel mondo di teatro molto molto antico, più antico del nostro.
You know why my music is very, very dramatic? It's because my life even more dramatic, actually. You know, I see you young students here, but we are the generation, as your father, maybe your grandfather, we experienced the world without computer. So now, as Wi-Fi, it only happened in the last 30 years. And maybe you couldn't imagine when this world without computer, without Wi-Fi, without a cell phone, you really cannot imagine. But actually we have to tell you what we lived and what your father and mother and grandfather and mother, that's what they are living. So in our mind, we always have a very, very dramatic way to understand the passion and also the culture and the history. And to me, when you hold a cell phone, everybody listen to things from YouTube to WhatsApp and Chinese Weixin and WeChat. And to me, that thing walking, to see the people walking on the street with cell phone, I see thousands of years, steps and the colors shifting around. It's like a montage for me. But somehow that kind of way of thinking is always being in me as a composer. So when I write music, for example, tonight you will hear my orchestral concerto, Marco Polo, although it's the piece for the symphony orchestra, but actually every instrument is a people, is a person. And every reason is the steps. And that somehow I see Marco Polo, first of all, is myself. And I also see everybody is a Marco Polo. And I love the way, actually, when I wrote Marco Polo with my librettist, Paul Griffith, and he said, actually, in this history, when you were born, every face is a mask. Every face, this mask in your whole life is trading your souls. I love that libretto. I think it's very fascinating. Somehow, it's so dramatic, and I feel that's the way of Dante. You know Dante? Yeah. Dante somehow had that kind of passionate quality. Make you feel so strongly. So my music is very much influenced that way. So tonight, for example, when you hear the cell phone symphony and the Passacaglia, and I use the cell phone, and I recorded the 6 ancient music. You know, 8,000 years ago, when Chinese people invent music, the first music is always bird music. You know why? Because in the ancient time, the Chinese people, they always believe the bird is the translator between the heaven and the people. So that time, they don't understand the nature. Then they always believe the birds can translate. But actually, Da Vinci, it's Da Vinci, Italiano. Da Vinci said, you know, many hundred years ago, said, if you want to know how birds fly, and you have to know how wind blow first. That's very interesting. An artist several hundred years ago said so, and the scientists heard whatever Da Vinci says. Then they invented airplane. Very interesting. You see, art and the science and the technology is always sticking together. So to me, I never thought, oh, technology is terrible, it's bother my color and my soul and my organic thinking of life. No. Even shamanistic culture, for example, in my Hunan village. Hunan is one of the most important Chinese shamanistic culture born place. We call it Chu culture, Chu Guo. And the shamanistic culture, if you want to make a shamanistic culture being kept, lived, inherited, I think the technology is very, very important. That's why when I created my map, I record the musician in the field and using their music talking to symphony orchestra around the world. And even after 1,000 years later, they are still talking to the music or orchestra in the future. You see, the technology will make people to meet through ages. And I believe technology and the passion of art could be a very, very good friend if you have a magical, if you have a technique which needs you to invent. You know, all the young people here, I'm sure you are going to be the inventors of the world. Because without you, we don't have a future. That's why we have to spend so much time to communicate with you, because if you understand me, it means the future understands me. So just now, Mr. Fideli, Evan Fideli, our artistic director, said something to me. He said, actually, today for the art, the judge is the audience. I totally understand, because I want to share whatever I do now. To who? To the audience. I think it doesn't matter they say yes or no, but I feel enjoy, because that's my life. If I don't choose to share with my art, and I don't want to be an artist. So I think that's very, very interesting way. So tonight you will see the technology will join the passion, the color, and also technology. For example, like in China, it's the fastest speed of development, but the problem is that the air pollution is terrible. So people feel the air in the city is just unbearable. So that's why I'm using the cell phone recording the 6 ancient bird music from Chinese instruments and download it into website, into WhatsApp, into internet, into MP3, whatever, and you will download. And when in the concert, you will see in a second, magically we can turn the city as a forest, we can turn a concert hall, we can turn the Music Biennale as a forest. And that's because of the technology. And you hear hundreds and thousands of birds through music playing, and you dream, oh my God, this is a forest. But that's the city you should come back. So to me, using technology is a very, very passionate and operatic and dramatic method. To me, technology is not just a 1 + 1, 2 + 2. Technology to me is a passion, it's the opera. So that's why in my creation, I always believe everything is a reflection of the passion. And the passion, it needs to be carried by all kinds of reflections. So to me, as a contemporary composer, it's very, very important to communicate or to use technology to communicate with the future. Yeah. So tonight you will see in many aspects, especially this cell phone symphony, and also percussion concerto, we're using stones, we're using water, we're using all kinds of rhythm colors to make music. And mostly, specifically, you have to combine with this Italian symphony orchestra. And that's the most difficult, is to have a cell phone play with the symphony orchestra, to have stone on the water play a symphony orchestra. It's difficult, but it's fascinating. It's like you are drinking fantastic whiskey and with beautiful wine. It's just incredible. So that's my sharing tonight with the Italian audience in Biennale.
A questo proposito, chi avrà la possibilità stasera di essere al concerto non si dimentichi di andare sul sito della Biennale, dove si può scaricare questo breve estratto, perché serve con l'applicazione, perché poi lo dovrete usare con il vostro smartphone e completare il percorso di creazione e interpretazione di Tandun durante Passacaglia, il Secret of Wind and Birds. Però c'è anche il concerto per percussioni, che è stato pensato per Martin Grubinger, qui interpretato da Simone Lupino. Chi non lo conosce ancora scoprirà un solista strepitoso. E a proposito di teatralità, questo è proprio un elemento importante che si aggiunge alla, diciamo, come corollario alla domanda che facevo prima, perché nella forza teatrale e drammatica delle creazioni, in questo caso di concerto, in concerto e non di opera, o almeno non soltanto di Tan Dun, l'interprete ha anche un valore molto importante e l'interprete spesso è chiamato a fare qualcosa che non ha mai fatto prima, perché si deve confrontare appunto con l'acqua, con le pietre, con oggetti inconsueti, con percorsi che sono diversi da quelli della sua normale formazione, oppure addirittura serve un interprete del tutto speciale per i suoi lavori. Questo mi sembra che sia stata non dico una preoccupazione, ma un'idea di fondo della creatività di Tan Dun, che in qualche modo rivoluziona un po' il modo di guardare alle forme che sono poi occidentali, più occidentali che non altri compositori del nostro stesso ambito, che magari hanno piegato, distrutto, cambiato completamente anche la forma del brano musicale. Ecco, Tan Dun lo fa in alcuni casi dal di dentro, perché crea una nuova forma di interprete. Ci vuole dire qualcosa a proposito di questo?
Last 3 days I was in Torino, working with this very, very genius Italiano, young kid. He is only 24, but he is everywhere in the world, and I think he's a Marco Polo, definitely reborn Marco Polo, because anything I write in the paper, this is the water, this is the stone, and he can do. And yesterday he asked me, you said this is for stone, one stone, but has a dum 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 dum. How could a stone play dum 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 dum? Can you imagine? So I told him about, when I facing this ghost opera, ghost dance in my Simao village in Hunan, and I told him how to play one stone, one single stone magically with do, re, mi, fa, sol, different pitch. And he was almost with tears. He said, actually, what I'm learning here is not about the technology. And he found, actually, Mr. Tan Dun, what you are talking about here is the technology has not just the philosophy, but the technology has a beauty. Technology has an aesthetic side. And I said, yes, everything, if we could, through technology, making our magical history, magical tradition, become something else, that's whatever, all those young people you are here, it's your future. It doesn't matter you are capitalist, you are artist, you are politician, or you are doctor, or whatever. The future really needs you to invent. But how to invent the future? I think the technology plus the organic, the nature, and passionate history, that 1 plus 1 plus 1 equals 9. Is equals 1. So you will see the Simone, this Italian, wonderful Italian percussionist.
Simone Rubino.
He's fantastic. And I just invited him to play in China with the China National Orchestra. And he is fascinating. I think he's one of the best percussionists today in the world. But he's only 24. And he can do anything in my Hunan village with the yin and yang, organic soundscape. But also anything with the meter, Western, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, very, very perfect. And he actually has the capability to swim in those shamanistic yin and yang, Laozi, Zhuangzi, Confucius, that kind of world. And he is the best also in the scientific, meteorized technology world. That's why I always call this kid, this 24 years old Italian genius, a Marco Polo today. You come to the concert and he is fantastic.
Bene, ci stiamo avviando verso la fine della parte diciamo che riguarda le mie modestissime domande, ma sono così modeste perché le vostre, che dovete cominciare a pensare, devono essere più interessanti, soprattutto quelle dei ragazzi che sono più giù, perché è questo che interessa a Tandun, che è qui con noi, ed è un'occasione non così frequente, quindi sfruttiamola. Però io voglio almeno rubare altre due risposte a Tandun, una che riguarda invece Tandun interprete, perché da tempo ormai dirige. Quanto è importante la sua attività di direttore sul podio e come è anche cambiata il suo modo di scrivere musica, il suo modo di comporre, il suo modo di concepire la musica da quando ha cominciato a dirigerla più frequentemente, in maniera costante?
One of those things Italiano told me is when you're making something, there's never a designer or maker. For example, in Baroque time, a composer is conductor, and the conductor is composer. So the people who make a coffee, a grand coffee, they make a cappuccino. So there's never a gap. But then I find it's very interesting. The 20th century has been passed. Then I find, if you ask me who they are the best conductors in the 20th century, you see, Bernstein, right? Gustav Mahler, and Benjamin Britten, and Richard Strauss, and Pierre Boulez, and of course, besides, of course, we have carriera, we have, but you see, most of those great conductors actually are composers. Then I find to myself, I often, actually psychologically, I often try to compose much more from a conductor's point of view. You know why? Because it's very practical. Conductor is as a way of thinking, very, very metallized, structuralized. Somehow the structure and the metallized things is associated with the time and the space. It's a very interesting way of thinking, actually. Very technique, but also very spiritual. But a composer is different. When a composer thinking about space, it's not a room with a view. It's not a river in canal in Venice. It's a river of galaxy. It's a river of thousands of years. And when the artist is thinking about something very, very organic, and they can transform in a second, chemically and spiritually, as something totally uncontrolled by himself. And those two, one is limited, another is unlimited, limited and plus unlimitation. These two plus together, it becomes something very unique. That's the art of an art. That's why I thought conducting and composing, if you know in both, it always be a privilege to touch the soul of music, to touch the art of the art. So that's why I learned from the history, and I learned from music history specifically. I find I should be both. So that's why I always encourage the young artist and the young musician. I said, in order to compose better, sometimes you need to learn conducting. And in order to be a good conductor, you must know how to compose. That's what I felt in the Baroque time, especially in Italy. And everybody is a conductor and everybody is a composer, and you never actually have a professional a person only composing or only conducting before the Mendes, before that time. So that's why today my life, I also feel that conducting is a very good way to exercise. It's because when you compose, you're always sitting there like you are in the game, in the computer game. You can be there for 3 days, no moving. But to me, composing is like a meditation. It's like walking in the church and talking to the Jesus and the Buddha. And you don't have to move actually for 7 days. But that's also dangerous for your body. So I think conducting made a marvelous balance, and you can stretch, you can redefine the tempo and the speed and the meters within your life. And that's also very, very shamanistic way to observing yourself with a modern technology about your body. So I think conducting is important.
Podio e sciamanesimo da Lunan uniti insieme, come sempre quel percorso di Yin e Yang che ci ha suggerito sin dall'inizio Tandune. Allora una domanda che diciamo si inserisce bene in un profilo come questo, che è una domanda che a me capita spesso di fare o ai direttori d'orchestra, ai musicisti, ai compositori, a chi davvero la musica la propone, la propugna, la crea, anche la propaga, ma a un livello alto, importante nel mondo, che raggiunge tante orecchie, tanti occhi diversi, perché poi come compositore per cinema lei raggiunge anche tanti occhi che magari alla musica lì per lì non fanno caso, perché la musica la scoprono proprio attraverso il cinema. Qual è il posto che la musica, la nostra musica, la musica che ascoltiamo anche qui alla Biennale, che sono tante musiche diverse, però musica d'arte, così vogliamo chiamarla, quale posto ha oggi nella società questa musica e che parole può dire in una società, e qui non facciamo differenza fra le distanze che ci possono essere fra l'Oriente e l'Occidente, fra la Cina, l'Italia, l'Europa, gli Stati Uniti, il Sud America, ma sono anni molto travagliati per le nostre società, per tutte. Che posto ha la musica, che parola ha la musica da dire?
The world become more and more difficult is because we feel lacking of a vocabulary to talk to each other, and we're lacking of spirituality and the comprehensions on the fast speed development of our disasters and also fantastic things. So music become so interesting. I don't know if you noticed that. Even you turn on the television, you see the advertisement music becomes so diverse actually. And sometimes electronic, and sometimes they just make a drip of water become so computerized. And sometimes they can make 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4 as something liquid, as a river. And you see, the idea of composing become never ever like today's reinvention. And we find actually the media, the communication become the biggest sort of a field for education, for practicing and observing also. So I find it's very interesting to for example, like a wizard language that we're lacking. We need to actually open up and to reinvent a lot of things. Like from an artist's point of view, for example, like tonight you will see I have to conduct the audience. To conduct audience using the cell phone, and everybody has 52 seconds of sound of birds, and then to make everybody to turn the city in the 1 second as a forest. It's a huge escape. But actually it's a way for me to reinventing the vocabulary, how to communicate with the East and the West, the kids and the grandmother and fathers, and also the concert hall and forest. And this is just a tiny example, but this example probably gives you a Lao Tzu's yin and yang's basic instinct is what is the real thing for this world today to communicate, to understand each other. I think it's not just and today we find the capitalists and the politicians also become artists so urgently, because you know why? Because especially not just artists, even for capitalists, you see, for the financial artist, they need to reinvent, because the world has been re-emerged and changed as before, never happened before. Never. So you have to reinvent, because you have to have vocabulary to talk to the reality. And this is happening now in the arts, in the artist circle. In each of the time Biennale, I was talking to our president. I said, every artist, when they come to the Biennale, when they return to home, their price went up. You know why? It's because it doesn't matter you're a Cambodian artist, you're a Vietnamese artist, you're a Chinese artist, because you're recognized by Italy. You're recognized by the world, by the West. You see, the prize, although it's the poison, but the prize sometimes illustrating the world's communications. It's fortunate and unfortunate. So I think to reinvent the vocabulary of arts and the communications and the capitals exchange in many aspects of our human field is the most urgent things in our society. And of course, the artists, they're always working in the frontiers, because they are actually dealing with the passions and the love and the families and the emotions, actually. So, in my music, for example, today actually is my day to open myself. If you look at my Facebook and my WeChat, in the last few months, I said I have to close myself for all my communications, basically telephone, television, computer, and the cell phone, whatever, in order to working as a music monk to finish a piece called the Buddha Passion. The Passion of Buddha, or Compassion of Buddha. I wrote a St. Matthew Passion 20 years ago for Bach, as a commemoration for Bach. And after my St. Matthew Passion was performed, since that Passion was using organic orchestra, basically sound of wind, sound of stone, sound of water, and sound of breath a lot as a expressions for that passion. And the German critics says, oh, this sounds like a Buddha passion. Then I found this very interesting. I said, why not just write another Buddha passion? So that's why in the last few months I closed myself composing for this new passion. But it's very interesting. I have to reinvent a lot of languages, because passion and compassion is very interesting. I'm talking about technology, I'm talking about technique, I'm talking about the arts of art, I'm also talking about history. I'm not talking about the religion or talking about the gaps. I'm just talking about something pure. I think to reinvent a language, to let these ancient stories in India, in China, in Japan, in Korea, could be shared by other end of the Silk Road, of this passion of compassion. And musically needs a lot of technique. I think the vocabulary. This is very interesting. So that's why I hope next year I can share with you my compassion. So till now, I think this discussion, this interview, is very interesting. It's because it also gave me a chance to remind myself what is today's world, and this Music Biennale and the Biennale here, and it certainly is the biggest stage in the Marco Polo era, Marco Polo phenomenon. And I think I have to thank the Music Biennale. I have to thank Andrew and gave me this chance. I have to thank the President that Ivan gave me this chance to share my world with your world, and eventually I hope it could be a one world together. Thank you.
Spiegato per il suo lavoro non è così sempre aperto come sembra, così disponibile, perché il lavoro di compositore è un lavoro che poi lo assorbe e lo porta, è un uomo che viaggia in tutto il mondo, che incontra persone in tutto il mondo, poi lo porta necessariamente a chiudersi, a lavorare dentro se stesso. Noi abbiamo questa possibilità adesso di, io ho fatto il lavoro di mantenere per me il massimo livello di banalità nelle questioni. Ora tocca a voi invece di scegliere il massimo grado per far fare a Venezia una magnifica figura, così anche nella curiosità che abbiamo. Io vi ricordo, se volete, che poi potete andare a cercare il website, il sito del maestro Sandun, perché è magnifico e racconta moltissime cose di lui, se dopo vorrete approfondire. Però non c'è niente di meglio che avere il compositore qui e fare delle domande. Vogliamo cominciare? Chi è che ha la prima domanda per aprire la nostra conversazione? C'è una domanda che credo ci sia in italiano.
Maestro, benvenuto a Venezia. La mia domanda è questa: dei compositori italiani del 1900, qual è il suo preferito? Tanto per sapere un po' più di lei e di quello che pensa. Grazie.
Of course, the two Respighi. I love Respighi, especially the trilogy of Rome, and also I loved actually Lucia Berio's 14 folk songs, Italian folk songs. Actually, that piece fascinated me so much. You know why? It's 14 Italian or Western folk songs, very ancient. But actually, in the orchestration, in the orchestra, there's so many other colors actually reflecting how two worlds talking. I think that's very fascinating me if you're talking about 20th century Italian music or composer influenced me.
Quindi abbiamo scoperto Respighi e Luciano Berio, questa coppia piuttosto inedita per noi, è molto interessante. La prossima domanda.
Quanti anni ha studiato per diventare così bravo?
I think Lao Tzu said, you know, you end of a life still a new student. I always believe if you thinking every day is something fascinating to learn, and you are a permanent kid, you are a permanent student, and that becomes so interesting that make the tempo and the speed and make your life expanding, actually. So to me, I think I learn every day as a hungry kid, actually. I think that's made my life is not so boring, actually.
Sì, era una domanda sicuramente interessata, perché magari il modo con cui Tannù racconta la musica fa venire qualche idea anche ai nostri giovani. Non è un percorso necessariamente così lontano e così difficile. C'è un'altra domanda.
Per lei cos'è la musica? Che spazio ha nella sua vita? È importante? Ha un significato speciale? Cos'è per lei?
You know, as a painter, you always have to choose the colors for your paintings. Blue, red, oil, maybe ink, maybe something else. But I have to remind you, the most important resource for you art making is your life, is your own experience. And we sometimes often forget about this. So as a composer, we have called score. We have to write scores. And actually, to write on the score is just the notes, do, re, mi, fa, sol, or is your memory from your grandmother to mother, from your Florence at home to China, from Venice to Beijing. Who knows? But actually, to be an artist is the profession to write about your life, not just to write about the notes or colors.
E quindi se vogliamo essere artisti dobbiamo cominciare adesso, possiamo cominciare da questa giornata con la nostra vita. Ci deve essere sicuramente un'altra domanda.
Che tipo di musica gli piace?
I like, depends, I think today it's very funny, maybe like you. It's very difficult to say I only could love one kind of music, because, for example, when I'm with a woman and when I'm with a man, I need to listen to different kind of music. When I'm cooking or when I am drinking, I need to listen to different kind of music. And actually when I am conducting or when I am only dancing, and I need to have different kind of music, then I find actually our needs for art and music become so diverse. And if your kids, I'm sure, if you in the morning eat spaghetti, in the lunch still spaghetti, in the evening still spaghetti, it's strange, right? So sometimes you eat in the morning, maybe it's congee with milk, in the lunch it's the sushi plus some poultry, ramen, yeah. Or in the evening is a spaghetti, you know. So that's our life today. It's very, very diverse. So I love very, very diverse music.
Ancora una domanda?
How important is nature in your music?
Direttamente con la traduzione, faccio notare. How important is nature in your music? How important?
You said it in English? Yes, it's very funny. I was trying. I was expecting Italiano. Then I said, oh, it's different. I think nature is very important to me. I know you. Do you love to go to nature? You know why you love to go to nature? I tell you, because when you are in the nature, there's something quite capable to describe your feeling. For example, the beautiful air and the scent of the nature and the grass and the river and the stones. and also kind of a relaxing freshness. And all of those things, equally like you are in a meditation mood, imagining the universe and space. So the nature, I thought, it's always been an all-time artist resource of imagination, from Da Vinci to Monteverdi, from Dante to Shakespeare. So to me, the nature is very, very important. Sometimes when I have difficulties thinking or leave, I always go to the nature to have a fresh air and the beautiful colors, and I want to create this kind of a natureness in my life. For example, China. In China, you almost have everything now, because China is the big market for the world now. Every brand, like Giorgio Armani had 10,000 stores in China. Can you believe that's what's happening now? But there's one thing China don't have now. Is China, they don't have the place without people. And they don't have a place no people, only wind, fresh air, beautiful tree, and animals, stillness, quiet. And I'm saying that this is psychological and also environmental for both. So you can imagine, you can create with your creations, music. So that's why nature is the resource of the imagination. It always, actually. I hope you agree with it.
Io credo che abbiamo ancora tempo forse per un paio di domande. Una o due domande, quindi ecco.
Lei quanto tempo ci mette a creare una sua canzone?
I write music actually thinking for a long time. For example, I could thinking about one piece for 10 years. And this year, first of all, I normally to find a story, find a subject, then I find I have to find a way, has a potential to reinvent something interesting. Otherwise, I thought it's boring to make another new piece. Why you have to make another piece? There's so many good music already. Then I also find a way to thinking about, basically I compose in the heart, in the mind. And when I really sitting in front of a table to start to compose, actually, I find that normally I just written down whatever I already composed in the mind. I just write down on the paper. So, to answer this question, I said, it's very long actually. I compose in my mind normally take a few years and a few months sometimes. But also I say it's very short. When I think I'm ready, actually I sit down. For an opera, I only need a few weeks. And sometimes one day I can write 10 or 20 songs. Just so, and when I was a child, actually I was trying to train myself. I don't know, when I was your age, the teacher and the mother and father always teach us to write a diary. You always written down today what's happened to you about your life. And when I was a child, I always trained myself to write my diary in music. So it means every day I written down my life and my data of schedules in music notes. And I found that training actually is very, very interesting because I'm able to talk in musical notes about whatever I want to say. So as a music teacher, sometimes I think this is important to teach the kids. If you teach kids, if the kids is able to express themselves with improvisations on the piano or instruments or singing or composing, or that's very, very interesting. And you also can have a diary on color or calligraphy as a painting, a drawing. I found it's very interesting actually. I don't know if Western institutions have this method, but I found this myself. I think this is very interesting training actually. I start to train the young students now, young kids. I said, if you want to learn music from me, and every day you have to write down your diary. But this diary must be in notes, the music, about your sadness, about your happiness, about today you meet your grandmother, and that day you meet your doctor, and you had a fighting with your mom, and everything. I want you to write in notes. And after 20 years of this training, and if somebody gave you a book, hey, this is the Hamlet, Shakespeare, and they say, sing it. You are able to do it, actually, after 20 years of this training, with the passionate sort of expressions. So this is what I feel, yeah.
Lei a che età ha iniziato a suonare?
Oh, actually, I started to play music when I was 3 or 4. But, when I was your age, China was in the 1950s, 60s, and there's no orchestra, no music instruments. But also in that time, China was doing the Cultural Revolution, and any Western music is not allowed to be heard. So to me, I don't know what is the piano. I didn't know what is the violin. But actually, I started to play music when I was 3 in the river, in the mountain. So I was a wild child. Actually, I never had shoes because when we were young, we don't have shoes. We only wash your feet when you go to the bed, and after you're sleeping, you just touch the ground, run, and the whole day no shoes. So we are the bare feet, white boys in the mountain and the rivers, and we play music with the river. So we don't have drums. We just we make the water, and we don't have music instruments. We're using the cooking pots, like a wok, cooking with tea, and we're using whatever. Even some of those shamanistic high priests, when they make a ceremony for the funeral, when they're making ceremony for the wedding, they don't have professional instruments. They only have cooking pots and the stones, but make a ceremony. But actually, that time I didn't know much about why it happened like that. But today, when I recall this kind of memory, I feel fascinating. It's almost like opera. So I started to play when I was very little. But actually, you may also start playing when you were very little. You know why? You cannot imagine if a kid is 2 or 3 years old not playing, and they may buying the play with. If you notice that your young brother or young sister, when they are 2 or 3, they're always playing very actively. They have a very, very natural way of being musical. But the problem is of our education. And our education is always aimed using something already happened to train your future. And then they always teach our kids about art is how you have to express yourself this way. The color, the structure, the sketches. But actually they are not opening up, let the kids to play just according to their natural way of feeling. Because that natural way of feeling actually is the most powerful engine to lead himself or herself to be in the fascinating world he loved. So that's why I think, my wife also are very, very interesting in the kids' education about the very, very early behave, which leads to a very, very natural, fascinating status. I think music education, it needs to actually pay much more attention about how kids play, how they want to play. It's very, very important. And you see, most of the fascinating music genius, they are not actually from a music family. Many, not often, of course, sometimes they have from music family too. But I found that most of the music genius actually, they came from not music family. You know why? Because they are lucky. They don't have a father or mother with a conventional way of training you as a musician. And you were free. You can do this and that, and you are very much keep that basic sense of imagination and to play or how to play sense in your childhood. That's why everybody actually played music very, very early. If you pay attention to see, I did too. But play music without music instruments, even more musical than playing with the instrument sometimes. So please, to play, don't have to play with the piano. You can play whatever. You play whatever play with. That's play itself is a phenomenon of artistic imagination. So, thank you.
Allora suonate, cercate il vostro strumento musicale qualunque esso sia e suonate. Io ringrazio la Biennale, ringrazio il Presidente Baratta, Maestro Ivano Fedele, ringrazio la gentilissima conduttrice che ha creato per me la voce italiana del Maestro Tandur e il Maestro Tandur, per favore, e voi tutti